Okay, moving on to the next video, which is about feedback, and we need to know about the 6 types of feedback that we can use during skill acquisition. First one we're going to look at is extrinsic feedback. Okay, so this information is from internal sources. Now, if you try and get words in, like I always say, the kinesthesis, right, enables a performer, the pole vaulter, to adjust during a performance. So it's the feel of what's going on. And this can be done by the joints, the muscles, the movement, but it's done within. Then we're going to look also extrinsic feedback, sources outside of the learner. So it could be the coach telling someone how to do things. So we'll look, first of all, look at intrinsic and extrinsic. Okay, so moving on to intrinsic feedback. This is sort of the explanation of it. Okay, so the kinesthesis, you get the feel of the movement as it's performed. It's all done within inside your body. Detected by the proprioceptors. That's a really nice word to try and get in some exam answers. So that is your muscles, your tendons, your joints. This is that's how it's detected, the feel of that movement. Helps the autonomous performers to correct movements. Okay, so when you're at the autonomous stage of learning, you should be able to then compare yourself to the perfect skill, and you can correct yourselves accordingly. So, for example, the pole vault is used as an example. Can adjust their technique during the performance. So if something goes slightly wrong, they can feel it's going wrong using their proprioceptors and then adjust accordingly. Okay, then we talked about extrinsic feedback. You already know it comes from an external coach. It can be positive and it can be negative. It's used to support intrinsic feedback. Okay, we're trying to, maybe this coach here could be saying a few things to make this learner think about what's going on, so then she can start developing intrinsic feedback. It's good for cognitive performers who have not yet developed the feel of the skill yet. Again, remember, this person, if that was a cognitive stage of learning, they've got no sort of idea of the whole skill, how it should be done effectively, so it really relies on the extrinsic feedback of the coach. So again, the example here, the coach here is giving the feedback to the novice golfer. Now, what you're going to get asked in your exam will be, what are the advantages and the disadvantages of using each type of feedback? Okay, so I want you to have a look at each one of these and make sure you're happy with it. Okay, so the intrinsic feedback, good for the autonomous stage of learning. Okay, and the intrinsic feedback or the kinesthesis helps fluency of the skill. Okay, and in a way, it makes them more independent. All right, if they can get the intrinsic feedback, they can start coaching themselves a little bit more. The performer has time to think about or focus on the peripheral stimuli, right? So it's then talking about, if they can get this intrinsic feedback, they can start looking at other things to give themselves feedback on and maybe move their performance on a little bit more. The disadvantage is, okay, it's less effective at the cognitive stage of learning, okay, and the associative stage of learning, so the first 2 stages, okay, because they haven't quite got it developed yet, it does rely on that extrinsic feedback coming in. It can hinder learning if it's overused, okay, and can be demotivating. If you're expecting them to sort of give themselves some feedback, they're going to get fed up eventually. So moving on to extrinsic feedback, okay, it's brilliant for the cognitive learners and the associative stage of learning, helps understand the pattern of movement, teaches the performer to know and how to focus on intrinsic feedback. What we want to do with all our performers is get you using intrinsic feedback. I'm trying to help you with this video, try and get yourself some intrinsic feedback so you can start using yourself and analysing your own performance in the context of an exam. It can be a source of positive reinforcement, okay, so it could be, again, something very positive. The stimulus response is good. The disadvantage is the learner can become more dependent and can be too dependent on it. Now remember, think back to manual and mechanical guidance, that's very similar. It's less effective in developing kinesthesis, which is needed to reach the autonomous stage of learning. Again, if you rely on your coach to tell you how it all feels, okay, you're not going to get to that autonomous stage. Again, it can be overused, okay. If it's overused, its less effectiveness as a source of positive reinforcement is lessened. Okay, I think you all know a coach that is just giving you so much positive extrinsic feedback, it gets to a point where it gets a little bit annoying, and you think, actually, I don't really deserve this type of extrinsic feedback, it's positive feedback, I'm going to switch off. So you want to just use your extrinsic feedback sparingly. And I think, you know, on the flip side of that, you'd probably still know a coach that is always negative. Okay, again, it's extrinsic feedback, and if it's overused, it's just going to devalue that learner. And again, if you're always too positive, it's going to lessen its effect. So we're now going to look at positive and negative. Okay, so positive, okay, as you would imagine, is given by the coach, when the movement is correct, e.g. when controlling a ball in basketball, nice and easy. Negative talks about when the movement is incorrect. Start thinking about your SR bonds, thinking about operant conditioning, okay, trying to think about how that would fit into that. So the positive feedback, okay, is given or received when movement is correct, can be intrinsic and extrinsic, used to reinforce the action, good for motivating performers. Okay, the teacher praising the correct passing technique in netball. Okay, been a very positive person all the time going on. Okay, negative feedback, okay, you're trying to give it when the response is incorrect. Okay, again, it can be intrinsic and extrinsic. Reduce the chances of bad habits. Okay, so this person here has got themselves in an awful position to try and catch the ball. Okay, negative feedback should come in then to try and reduce the chances of that happening again. Okay, we're trying to get rid of that stimulus response bond that might have developed there. So it's really important that as a coach we say that is wrong. Okay, and they've got to know it's wrong. One of my big bugbears when I'm watching my son play football is the throw-ins. I think every throw-in they do is wrong. Either both feet are off the ground or they use one hand. It's pretty bad. There'd be no harm in telling that person that threw the ball in a little bit of negative feedback. That is wrong. Telling them why it's wrong, and hopefully it won't happen again. They're getting into bad habits. I know they are getting bad habits. All right, so it's a chance of using some negative feedback. As long as it's done in the right way, it's absolutely fine. Okay, and if you think about reinforcement at training, you might want to bring in a annoyer or a punishment for a foul throw to get rid of the chances of that being wrong. All right, so just think about that. As always, you're going to get asked about your positives and your negatives. The positives, the advantages of positive feedback. It's great the cognitive stage of learning. Now, what you want to do with these people, in a nutshell, we want them to come back next week. Okay, so we're going to make it positive. Okay, we're going to make it fun. Okay, we're going to give them lots of positive feedback so they do come back the next week. It gives you confidence, improves motivation, and that means they're going to come back week in and week out. The disadvantages, it's not quite as effective at the autonomous stage of learning when mistakes need to be identified. So if you think, you know, the elite performers, we do need to be picking up on the errors, right, and giving negative feedback on that. It's ineffective if unspecific or imprecise. Let's not just, oh, you're wonderful today. Wonderful, everything was wonderful. That's too generic. It's got to be specific, right? You've got to tell them what was good about it. So if you were analysing a team play, you wouldn't just say you were fantastic. You would look at the back four. Okay, you were positive because you were staying the line on the offside. Really well done. The midfield, you might have to give some negative feedback, and then the strikers, you know, there might be two there that you might need to give some feedback on. It might not all be positive. So it can be, if it's just generic, it can be less effective. And again, I've already mentioned this before, that if it's too much, is given too much positive, it can lose its impact. We all know that coach that is just always too positive. It doesn't really mean anything. Okay, try and be that coach that will give positive feedback and actually mean something. So negative stage of learning is brilliant for the autonomous stage of learning. I play cricket and I do really like when somebody picks up on my faults, okay, and I really do like that negative feedback to try and make me get better. I'm not too fussed about positive. I'm more into the negatives, about how I can change it and how I finally tune my skills. It'll help me stay at the autonomous stage of learning from doing that, and I'll actually get motivated to try and get rid of those errors. So I'm not going to tell you what my weaknesses are, okay, but it does motivate me to try and make them better, and I need that by negative feedback. Again, the disadvantages, you would understand the early stages, it's no good, okay. They're not going to, if you give this kid here a load of negative feedback, they're not going to come back week in and week out, which is obviously not going to be used. Again, let's not be that one coach that is always ultra negative, and it can be demotivating. So we've got to make sure you're positive and you're negative. You've got a balance there, okay, making sure it's specific and it's right for what's going on. Okay, then probably the two that you probably don't know just from everyday life is knowledge of results. Now, it always gets called the KR, and then knowledge of performance, the KP. So knowledge of the results is the information about the outcome or the result of the movement. Okay, so it is for example, they've used the hockey example, right? It's knowledge of the results. Did it go in or not? A football shot at goal, did it go in or did it not go in? The netball pass, did it get to the intended destination, yes or no? It's all about the results of what happened. Now, knowledge of performance is slightly different, okay? That just talks about the quality of the movement, all right? So it could be used more for this event because you get judged on the quality of performance. So you'd be looking at the straight limbs, the point of the toes, the body tension, and then obviously the landing on the floor is the result, but you'd be getting the knowledge of the performance would be here, okay, actually how it goes on. So if you use knowledge of performance in a football example, you might use it at the cognitive stage of learning and say to them, look, I don't care if it goes in or not, it's not a problem. I want you to use the right technique to make sure that you're getting the right quality of movement, and I don't care if it goes in or not. So the cognitive stage, you might want to forget about knowledge results. It's not really about that. Think about my son's junior cricket team, which I coach. I'm not too fussed about the results, and I mean that. I really don't care if they win or lose. I'm more about their knowledge of the performance, how we can get better, because eventually this will come. So just to clarify that then, knowledge results, the outcome of the movement can be positive or negative. It's extrinsic, useful at all levels of skill. Okay, so footballer use it all the time. Premier League footballers, okay, did the ball go where they wanted it to go? Okay, so that's all they're fussed about. And you might want to say more elite, they aren't bothered about the technique potentially as long as it gets to where it's wanted to go. The knowledge performance is about the technique, intrinsic, extrinsic. Okay, important for the autonomous stage of learning is feeling the balance, control. Okay, to make sure it's all where they want it. Really, really prominent in gymnastics. Then we just look at the advantages and the disadvantages. The advantages of knowledge of results. Okay, it's great for cognitive and associative stage of learning. Okay, allows correction after movement or the outcome, enables skills to be modified. So you might say it didn't go in because, all right, of what went on. Good for open skills. Okay, the outcome result, not the technique, is measured. So if you think about an open skill for this hockey, okay, you might want to say, look, the ball did go in the net. Okay, and it went in. All right, so as a coach, you might want to use that. The disadvantage is not as effective. The autonomous stage of learning, okay, we can maybe argue that, can only be used after a movement has been completed. Corrections cannot be made during the performance, so therefore not as effective in some closed skills because technique is often a measure of success. E.g. a gymnastic vault is judged on how good the technique is, not on the overall performance in general, but it is all about how it looks, right? And knowledge of results isn't very good for that gymnastics. Knowledge of performance, ideal for the autonomous stage of learning when kinesthesis helps with the technique. Okay, it allows for quick corrections. Okay, in a gymnastic routine, you might know that you're going wrong during your performance and change it and sort of modify it to how you want it. Very effective in some closed skills, enables the technique to be adjusted during performance, e.g. small adjustments during gymnastics form. Okay, the disadvantage is less likely at the cognitive stage because the performance is probably going to be not quite there yet for you to give feedback. So if you're teaching a cognitive stage learning, maybe some 5 or 6 years of football, okay, you might not want to just focus on the performance. I know it contradicts what I've said about my cricket team, but these are some of the disadvantages. It's gained through experience, so it may take a long time to develop. Therefore, it's a long process, which can be demotivating. All right, what I need you to do is go back over them and just make sure you've got that in your head. And I will now try and post my next video, maybe in a couple of tests. All right, thanks.